you hear me? Loud enough, great. Good evening and welcome to the beautiful Fulton campus of Itawamba Community College. I am Megan Lewis-Ite and I'm an instructor here at ICC, history instructor and the primary sponsor for the Political Science Club at ICC. It is my great pleasure to welcome everyone here to our annual celebration of Constitution Day. Now, I'm going to don my glasses. I would also like to welcome a special welcome to our distinguished guests seated in the front. Amongst these prominent guests, we have members of our Board of Trustees, state legislators, members of our local, county, and civic governments, and representatives of our surrounding rural electric power cooperatives. If those distinguished guests would please do me the honor of standing and so that you could be recognized, that'd be great. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your time with us this evening. The title of our event tonight is Power to the People, by the People, Northeast Mississippi's role in bringing electricity to rural America. Each year, publicly supported universities and colleges across our country are required by the federal government to take a day to honor the timeless and historical document that has become the beacon of our unwavering democracy. That is the United States Constitution. The purpose of this holiday is to honor the 39 delegates of the Constitutional Convention who signed this document. On this evening, we're going to honor these men by taking a look at one of the keystone principles of the Constitution. And that keystone principle for tonight is federalism. Federalism is something very important. It is the governing principle that binds our central government in Washington, D.C. to our local, state, and regional governments. In our presentation tonight, we are going to see how the federal government, under the administration of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, during the New Deal, developed a model for economic development by providing electricity to rural America. This vision would come about with a spirit of cooperation between the federal government and local, regional governments across rural America. We are honored tonight to have some distinguished guests among us to serve as panelists this evening to discuss this very topic. It is my great pleasure to introduce our featured guests. Spearheading our presentation tonight is none other than our own Public Service Commissioner for the Northern District of Mississippi, the Honorable Brandon Presley. Mr. Presley is no stranger to ICC, for he has been a guest speaker at prior Constitution Day events. He is also a former member of the Board of Trustees here at ICC. During some of that tenure, he served as board president. Brandon Presley was elected Public Service Commissioner for the Northern District of Mississippi in 2007, re-elected in 2011 and 2015, and most recently in 2019, that one without even opposition. Elected to the Public Service Commission at age 30, he was the youngest commissioner ever elected in Mississippi. Now, elected at age 23, he served as the mayor of Nettleton from 2001 to 2007, one of the youngest mayors in Mississippi history. Commissioner Presley currently serves as the chairman for the Mississippi Public Service Commission. He has also served as president of the Southeastern Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, which is composed of public service commissioners from the 11 southern states and Puerto Rico. He is a member of the board of directors of the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, for which he serves on multiple NARUC boards and committees. He is co-vice chair of the NARUC Committee on Gas. He is the former chairman and current member of the Committee on Consumers and the Public Interest. and he is a member of the International Relations Committee. He is a former member of the Board of Directors of the National Regulatory Research Institute. Commissioner Presley currently serves on the Advisory Committee for New Mexico State University Center for Public Utilities, as well as the Advisory Committee for Mid-Continent Independent System Operators. Commissioner Presley is a graduate of Harvard University's Kennedy School of State and Local Government Executives. Commissioner Presley is a lifelong resident of Nettleton, Mississippi, where he is a member of Enon Primitive Baptist Church. He is the past president and current member of the Nettleton Lions Club and is a member of the Nettleton Civitan Club. Our next honored guest is Mr. Michael Callahan. Michael Callahan serves as an Executive Vice President and Chief Executive Officer to the Electric Cooperatives of Mississippi, a statewide service organization representing Mississippi's 26 electric cooperatives. Prior to joining ECN in 2005, Mr. Callahan served as the Southern District Public Service Commissioner in Mississippi. Commissioner Callahan was first elected in November of 1999, the youngest ever elected to that commission. It seems like a theme, doesn't it? Oh, you beat me? Okay. Yes, the theme, the youngest ever for tonight. That's not me, by the way. That's why I wear glasses. He served as chairman of the commission from January of 2002 until January of 2004. While in office, Commissioner Callahan was actively involved with two regulatory organizations, the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners as a member of the Electricity Committee, and the Southeastern Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, where he served as president. Callahan attended the University of Southern Mississippi on a football scholarship and played the position of lineman. He graduated from USN with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice in 1989 and continued to the Mississippi College School of Law, where he earned a doctorate of jurisprudence degree. After college, Callahan worked for the law firm Lee, Roswell and Associates until becoming a criminal investigator and assistant district attorney for the 12th Judicial District in Hattiesburg. Upon leaving the district attorney's office in 1995, Michael started his own law practice, Hall and Callahan. He practiced law until accepting the position of the district director of the Southern District Public Service Commission, a position he held until February of 1999. Callahan is married to the former Melissa Hudson of Long Beach. They reside in Madison with their 3 children, Michael, 22, Caitlin, 19, and Victoria, age 16. The Callahans are members of the Broadmoor Baptist Church in Madison, Mississippi. Now, the last member of our panel, which I'm going to introduce tonight, is ICC's own Mr. Chris Stevenson. Mr. Stevenson is an American history instructor and chair of the Social Science Division here at ICC. Mr. Stevenson is beginning his 10th year with us. During his time at the college, he has served as an instructor for both traditional and online classrooms. He also teaches with the Honors College. Mr. Stevenson is currently serving as president of the ICC Faculty Association for the 2nd year. He has been named a QEP faculty mentor, the recipient of the William Winter Scholarship, ICC's Meritorious Achievement Award, and the 2018 John and Beth Cleveland Award. This is the highest honor bestowed to faculty. He is married to Jessie Stevenson, who is a public speaking instructor at the college. He has 2 sons, Rourke and Riley, and they are absolutely precious. The Stevensons reside in Mantachie and are members of the Gumtree Presbyterian Church in Tupelo. Now, just like I would with my classes, but I'll actually ask you to silence your cell phone devices. It'll be much nicer. Silence your cell phone devices as we welcome our panelists to the stage. Without further ado, let's welcome them to the stage for tonight's event.
Thank y'all very much for being here tonight, and thank you to ICC and to the Board of Trustees and to Mr. Stevenson and to all the faculty who have been so tireless in their efforts to put this on as part of Constitution Day. We're going to, in just a minute, view a video that really encapsulates what we're here to talk about tonight. If you imagine for just a minute, you could rewind the hands of time back to October 22nd of 1933 and begin to think from the Alabama line, just 14 miles from where we're standing, all the way across North Mississippi to the Mississippi Delta. Folks at this time of night had absolutely no electricity. They washed their clothes in wash pots and scrubbed them on scrub boards. There was no cooking on an electric stove. There were no lights. Literally, our part of America was in the dark. And our part of America in 1933 and the early 1930s was representative of rural America from coast to coast. And yet, our little corner of Mississippi, where you're from, came up with the idea and gave birth to the spirit that brought electricity to homes throughout rural America. The first 5 rural electric cooperatives in this country were created here in North Mississippi. And I know we're going to introduce our guests later on, but we have representatives here tonight, and I'm sure we'll do this later on, from the top, the first 4 electric cooperatives, and we'll talk about that history in just a minute. But in this film, I want you to think about what it was like for the average family in Mississippi and in the South. Still reeling from the Civil War economically, with no hope of hope, no chance to see their region and their family have a better life. They knew in their heart that not having electricity was holding their region back, but they didn't know what to do about it. But they came up with an idea. And tonight, we're going to spend some time talking about how that idea was born here, what it did for our people, what that example did for America, something that we all can take pride in. And what are the challenges of today that with this same spirit and with this same concept, that we can win the future in other areas. So as this video plays, I want you to think about everything of activity that you see in this video. Every idea, every activity, every scene, the idea for this word and where we are today was born right here in Northeast Mississippi. Let's play the video.
Imagine, if you will, what it must have been like after dark in the farms, ranches, and small towns of America 75 years ago. Before there was power. Before there was electricity. But that was all about to change, and change it did when farmers, ranchers, and rural families banded together to shine a light on the need to turn the lights on in rural America. Cooperation created the electric co-ops, and the co-ops created a movement so profound that President Franklin Roosevelt said, "The forward march of electric cooperatives has an even more profound significance in terms of our fight to preserve democracy." Is there any finer representation of democracy at work than neighbors helping neighbors? When the electric co-ops were born, something much bigger happened. For when we turn the lights on, we help democratize the American dream for the people, families, farms, ranches, and businesses of rural America. The effect was so powerful that in 1940, a man sitting in a pew in a small rural church in Tennessee was moved to say, "Brothers and sisters, I want to tell you 2 things. The greatest thing in the world is to have God in your heart, and the next greatest thing on earth is to have electricity in your home." 75 years ago, a handful of farmers and ranchers, united by the common values of honesty, responsibility, equality, and solidarity, and armed only with a powerful purpose, took the lead, banded together, and answered the call. Today, a new generation of electric co-op members, just like the farmers, ranchers, and rural families did 75 years ago, must again answer the call. We are the owners of the co-ops and are the fabric of the communities in which we live and work. And as faith and trust in other institutions sink, the need to empower, inspire, and mobilize each other to take care of ourselves, our neighbors, and our communities rises. Let it be known, it is time for this new generation to turn the lights on again, to power, protect, and grow our communities, not just with the electricity of our infrastructure, but with the electricity of our purpose, passion, ideas, and will, to ensure that the quality of life in all of the communities in which we live and work is improved. For our purpose is a mighty one, to power communities and empower members to improve the quality of their lives. And when we live up to our purpose, we relight the American dream. Think back now about the profound impact our founding members made 3/4 of a century ago, and grab hold of that same spirit, because we are the electric cooperative members of tomorrow, and our work has just begun.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your attendance tonight, and we thank you all for coming out tonight. It's always a pleasure to have distinguished guests such as Mr. Callahan and Commissioner Presley with us. And tonight, we want this to be a very organic presentation. We want to talk about the importance of how this all got started and where we are currently and where we're going in the future. And with these two gentlemen to my right, this is going to be a very fluid conversation and be much easier to conduct because these guys are the recognized authorities on this very topic. Segue into that, let's start with the idea of what brought power to the southeastern United States and the rest of rural America. The Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration during the 1930s passed a law known as the Rural Electrification Act, actually passed in 1936. This act was predicated on an agency that was created prior to the passage of the act in 1935, known as the Rural Electrification Administration. REA, you may have seen that logo on several of the pictures there. These gentlemen to my right are not only going to talk about how that dream came to a birth, but also how they were inspired by some pre-existing cooperatives that were already here in North Mississippi. We brought this to the world, essentially. We became a beacon for not just our part of the country, but for the rest of the United States. So this one is a great opportunity to not only look at where we come from, but also where we're going. So to open the conversation, Mr. Callahan, once again, we appreciate you making the trip up here. If you don't mind, you kind of give us an idea of exactly what cooperatives are and how they got their start here in the United States.
I can tell you what they are. I'm not really sure how they got there. They actually got their start over in Europe, but there's a lot of misconception about what a cooperative is. A cooperative is a private business owned by the people who use the service and buy its products. The primary focus is to provide the products or the service to the membership, not necessarily to make money and make a profit. It's a democratically controlled, one member, one vote, regardless of how much product you buy or service you use. And co-ops are usually single focus in nature, like water, electricity, telephone, something along those lines. What co-ops are not are government entities. I know earlier this year when we were doing legislation, we got picked on about going to the broadband business because we were a government entity, we were sponsored by the government. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Cooperatives are private corporations owned by those members they serve. The other thing that we're not is we're not benevolent organizations. We're not a non-profit charity. We are a not-for-profit corporation. And the way that the co-op, the model works, of course, any business has to have a profit, or in our vernacular, a margin. If you spend more money than you take in, you will not be in business very long. If you learned nothing else tonight, remember that for all you who want to go into business someday. But in the co-op world, if you have a $7 million in revenue, $5 million expenses, you're left with what we call a $2 million margin. You then take that margin and you allocate it back to your membership. But you don't give it back, you just allocate it on the books. You then take that $2 million and turn it back into your cooperative, in our case for lines, poles, to operate the cooperative. That is how a cooperative raises capital. Your normal corporations sell stock, and you buy the stock, they get the money, they raise capital that way. You have an ownership interest in the company. In the co-op world, you take that profit, you allocate it to the member, then you roll it back in to provide that good or service. Some co-ops, and I say some because in the valley, they don't do it this way, but some co-ops, they retire that capital at a certain set period of time, 20, 25, 30 years later. So what you're doing is you're loaning your co-op that profit, and then 20 years from now, they pay that back to you with no interest. That's one of the primary vehicles of a cooperative, is we have subordination of capital. In other words, the capital and the lenders don't tell you how to run the co-op. It's done by the members, for the members, for the good of the members.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. To give us a little bit of a backdrop on the inspiration for the cooperatives, Mr. Presley, do you mind explaining how the pre-existing cooperatives here in North Mississippi sort of gave the federal government the idea of how to manually operate these things? We think of guys like Marvin L. Cook who borrowed these ideas and concepts of these rural pre-existing cooperatives. We laid the foundation for that right here in North Mississippi. Do you mind expounding upon that?
Yeah, let's back up just a minute.
In the 1930s, as we talked about in the video showed, our families, our businesses, our region, our counties, our cities were in the dark. And the question really becomes, how do you electrify those communities? How do you bring the technology of that day to the most rural citizens to improve their quality of life? Our people saw, particularly in Mississippi, but throughout the South, the raw facts. And the raw facts were if you lived in a city that had electricity, you had a better quality of life. If you lived in a city that had electricity, or an area that had electricity, you had better health care. You had a better chance at a good job. You had actually a life to study by, believe it or not. In Nettleton, where I'm from, we got our power at that time from Mississippi Power and Light. We had this great advertisement that said, "Come to Nettleton. We have great churches, Brother Don. We have a great business district. We have X, Y, and Z, and we have electricity 8 hours a day." Now think about that, 8 hours a day. But that was a lot better than a lot of rural areas that didn't have anything. And so the issue in the 1930s was, how do you fix this problem? Family after family, business after business, farmer after farmer went trotting down to begging to the existing power company. For instance, in Corinth, I think Mississippi Power and Light had a small generating plant in Corinth, and said, "Would you please bring electricity out to Theo or out down to Rienzi? We really need it." And time and time and time again, those families were turned away. Because guess what? The power company at that time couldn't make money bringing electricity to those most rural people. And without that ability to make a quick turnaround on their dollar, they were not going to bring it to rural people. And so those families from our region and throughout America, but we're talking about North Mississippi here in the history here, were turned down time and time and time again. Although those mothers, fathers, grandparents saw their quality of life slipping away, saw children leaving, and they knew in their heart that if they did not do something to overcome the hurt, to break the excuses of the existing power companies who were only serving in the cities, that they literally were going to have to give up on rural life in Mississippi. And had they not had the inspiration, it's very well that you would have been decades getting electricity to our rural parts of America. The idea to fix this is really born in the American spirit. We as a region should take enormous pride, and you as students at this institution should take enormous pride, because I think over time we've just kind of forgotten about it. But this area came up with the idea in our country of how to fix this problem, because it wasn't just in Mississippi. It wasn't just in our state. Throughout the nation, rural people were begging for a better quality of life. And they said, we'll pay for it. And they were told, well, it's going to cost you X thousands of dollars to bring the poles and bring the wires, and it just isn't worth our time to come serve your rural area. So in 1934, in the back of McPeter's Furniture Store in downtown Corinth, a group of farmers, business leaders, people caring about their community, worrying about what's going to happen in that next generation, worrying about how the future's slipping away, came together and formed the Alcorn County Electric Power Association. Eddie Howard's here tonight. Eddie is the CEO and General Manager of Alcorn. Alcorn County Electric Power Association became the first rural electric cooperative in America. In the United States, every time that you travel across this country and you see a rural electric cooperative truck out there working on lines or putting up a pole and it says rural electric cooperative, you know that that idea was born in the state of Mississippi. The second rural electric cooperative created in America is Pontotoc Electric Power Association. Chuck Allen's here tonight, some of his board members and staff. Pontotoc Electric was the second rural electric cooperative born in this country. The third, they get in an argument about this. I want to just say they're tied for third. One was energized one day, one was formed the other. But Prentice County Electric Power Association, Ronnie Rowland is their manager. Ronnie's here with us tonight. And at that time, it was called Lee County Electric Power Association, which is today Tom Pickett. I know with some staff here, I think Mr. Long's on his way. He's our SVP, is their general manager. It's easy to say that the first 5, and close to the first 10, rural electric cooperatives were started here. Because the people of rural northeast Mississippi had it up to here with excuses of why their quality of life had to be so much worse than everybody else's quality of life. It's the same spirit that's brought our state through so many tough, challenging times, and our forefathers had that vision, but they had that passion in their heart to see this problem fixed. President Roosevelt, in all of the work in the New Deal related to electricity, many times cited what was called at that time the Corinth experiment. Because in Alcorn County, the Roosevelt administration said if you're as rural as Alcorn County is, you've got so few houses per mile, and it takes so much money to get to that last house, that last barn, that last business. If we can do it in Alcorn County, Mississippi, where it's so rural, and the people are so poor, but they can in fact pay the power bill, if we can do it in Alcorn County, we can do it in Corinth, we can do it anywhere in America. We can do it anywhere in this country. And so as you read the history of the New Deal, and the idea that the federal government had to look at this as a quality of life issue, and as the video said, it's an issue of democracy. At that time, it was also obviously the issue of quality of life. The wheels of motion of the REA and the New Deal went into effect and began to roll. Mr. Walt Willis is here tonight. He was a board member of Monroe County Electric Power Association. Monroe County Electric Power Association holds the distinction of being the first rural electric cooperative that was ever funded by the Rural Electrification Administration. So what you've got in our area of the state is you've got the birthplace of the idea, power to the people, by the people, in the most democratic, little d, American sense of neighbor helping neighbor, community helping community, county helping county, to come together and just figure it out once and for all how we're going to do this. If this idea had not been born here, I don't have any illusions that somebody else would have thought of it. At some point they would have. But where would our rural communities be today if somebody didn't think of this, did not pursue this, did not achieve it above all odds? And so, really, what makes this such a historic task and feat and moment in our history is the fact that people in the most rural, poorest state in the United States of America solved a problem that literally changed our world. Changed the future of rural Mississippi. Chuck Howell and I were talking about earlier. I think, Chuck, you said in the 1930s, Mississippi ranked 49th and 50th in actual electrification to homes and businesses and to our people in the early 1930s. Fast forward one decade later, the beginning of the 1940s, after the rural electric cooperative movement, we were #1 in the country in electrification to rural people. All because we took the future in our own hands. And our forefathers were not content in sitting around saying, well, maybe one day Mississippi Power and Light will get the power out to our community. They said, no, we can't wait anymore. We cannot wait any longer. We can't watch another generation leave. We're dying on the vine, and we got to do something about it. And so, you know, to me, this is so very important for us to all know and us to come back and revisit, Chris, because it's somewhat been lost in our region's history. You know, we were fortunate at the time, most of his views aside, Congressman John Hunnigan, who was from Congressman of this district, was a huge proponent of rural electrification and was really one of the guiding warriors to get this done in our area. November 18, 1934, President Roosevelt came to Tupelo. Talk about Tupelo becoming one of the first TVA city. Traveled through my hometown of Nettleton down to Amory to walk, congratulate the work that was going on at the Monroe County Co-op with a group of people who were coming on together for that co-op, and said then, you know, people in communities around this country are watching what you're doing in rural Mississippi. And I don't think you realize just how prophetic what he said was.
Well, and you look at the expanse of the cooperatives, you know, 1939, by the time it's been in existence for over 3 years, I think you had 1/4 of the American farms in America had electricity. You know, fast forward 15 years later, 78% of rural America farms had electricity. So obviously the idea took hold like a wildfire, and I take pride that here in North Mississippi we gave inspiration and breath to that. Mr. Callahan, do you mind speaking on where we are at the state currently? I think you had some visuals you want to present before the audience.
Yeah, but, you know, let's take it back a step, because I know we have a lot of millennials in here, and I was thinking, how can I put this in ways you would understand? You know, the narrative, as we saw in the video and all, is that a bunch of farmers got together and made this happen. And to some degree that's true, but it was more than that. Franklin Roosevelt, I don't know if y'all know, but he spent a lot of time in Warm Springs, Georgia, for the polio in his legs. And while he was there, he was going on his motorcade. I think he was maybe governor of New York at the time. And he was going there and he saw some farm hands pumping up a tractor tire. And Roosevelt wheeled down his window and said, hey, why don't y'all get an electric pump like I see in New York? You could do that half the time, you know, not that it's good. And they kind of looked at each other and said, you out of your mind? We can afford electricity. Look, electricity's too high here. Only city folks have electricity. And so Roosevelt went to his cabin in Warm Springs and he looked at his electric bill and he noticed it was 5 times higher than what he was paying in Hyde Park, New York. At the same time, there was a new organization formed in Pennsylvania called Public Service Commission. And they were having trouble with utility prices because the commissioner was right. The power of the electricity was held by very few. And there'll be a movie coming out here soon talking about Westinghouse, Tesla, and Edison. And I encourage you all to go watch it, because those men were titans of industry. And the only thing I can think for you millennials to relate to them today is Google. All right? Google is, you know, they're getting to all our lives. And you hear candidates talk about, we got to break up Google, we got to break up Google. Well, Roosevelt and some of the people up in the Northeast were looking at the hydropower in Canada and how cheap it was. And they were looking at Europe, where 95% of the farms in Europe already had electricity, and 95% of the farms in America had nothing. And so they realized that we were creating a monster in the power industry. And so I think in the 20s it was set, how can we break the back? How can we bring this power back to the people? And this is where John Rankin, one of the fathers of the Tennessee Valley Authority, and TVA became such a big part of doing that. Because the hydropower from TVA allowed the municipals and the cooperatives to have a reliable, steady source of power. And that's what we had to have to pull it off. Now, calling Alcorn the first, it's kind of, Alcorn was a co-op before we knew we were going to have co-ops. In fact, I did the research. Alcorn was actually formed by the TVA as a non-profit, what was it? It was a non-profit civil improvement corporation under the TVA Act. I found another history that said it was actually a Code 100 non-profit formed under the Mississippi Code. But at whatever rate, it was formed before we knew we were going to get the co-ops. And the thing that really made this happen was TVA spent, on June the 1st, 1934, TVA bought Mississippi Power out of Pontotoc, Lee, Itawamba, Union, Benton, Tippah, Prentiss, Tishomingo, and Alcorn County for $850,743. Now, you may say, well, why would they want to sell? And for those of you who probably never get this far, in the 1930s, some amazing things were happening. Commissioner, you know, as being commissioner like I was, the rate base. And the companies, right back then, these guys were gaming the system by stacking holding companies on top of each other and making a pyramid scheme. And every time this company was stacked and making a pyramid scheme, what did they get, Commissioner? Another rate of return, more money. And so Congress was forced to act and create the Public Utility Holding Company Act. PUCA is what we call it. And that limited how many holding companies a company had because they were gaming the system. And so at that time, the pressure was on these companies. Sam Insel, the founder of these pyramid schemes, was in the process of going to jail. And it was a big scandal. And I think the president and the people who were trying to bring the power back seized on that to force those sales. And those sales were allowed the co-ops to get started right off the bat. In fact, I read something, we got Chuck Howell from Pontotoc. The Pontotoc, at midnight on February 28th, 1935, the director of TVA, which would have been Bill Johnson, the old CEO, actually came to the courthouse in Pontotoc and gave the citizens of Pontotoc the contract. They then, at midnight, went out to the county, pulled the meter. Some reports said they smashed the meter and busted the meter and put in the TVA meter. And literally, the district manager for Mississippi Power Company became the superintendent of Pontotoc the next morning. And a TVA construction crew would come in of 18 men. They began building power lines out from the city, out a predetermined road in the county. So the abundance of the power in the TVA area allowed us to grow because, quite frankly, if we didn't have the TVA power, the state power, we didn't have anything to say. And so that was what was so important. The other thing is, and I always wonder when I was Southern District Public Service Group, why Mississippi Power was so mad at co-ops. And if you go to the history of the 70s and 80s, there's a lot of fighting that happened down south. But if you put our colored map up, please. Okay, there we go. There we go. You see the red line is kind of delineated. Basically, you see East Mississippi, that red line right below it. It goes around Central and then goes up. That is what we call the TVA fence. Every co-op inside that area is a distributor of the Tennessee Valley Authority. I read that the reason that TVA didn't cover the whole state of Mississippi was co-ops were growing so fast, TVA could not afford to extend the lines. At some point through there, Mississippi Power and Congress or Southern Company was able to stop the encroachment. But other than Tennessee, Mississippi is the second largest geographical territory for the Tennessee Valley. These were the co-ops that, well, over the period of a couple of years, from 1935 to 1939, had sprung up. With the exception, you see the big gray area in the middle, that is now serviced by Entergy. That would have been, or that was Capital Electric Power Association that was bought out by Mississippi Power and Light in the early 1970s and actually started a pretty bad war between the co-ops and the investor-owns until the late 1980s. But those co-ops were formed, and you can see The yellow down here is the Mississippi Power Company. And you can see how they were relegated to just the cities they serve. The black in the TVA area are TVA municipals. Same thing, those franchises were canceled, Mississippi Power came out, the TVA came in. Now let's show the green map. The green is the coverage of electric cooperatives throughout the state of Mississippi. We cover, as you see over here, we have 784,000 total meters, 674,000 residential meters. 50% of all the meters in the state belong to us. 40% to investor owners, 10% to municipals. And we serve approximately 85% of the land mass of the state. And it all started because a bunch of people had a vision. And what happened almost immediately when the co-ops took over, the rates were cut in half. And the half of the rates, I mean, imagine your bill, which was 1930, your $10 bill went to $5. The pressure on the politicians to expand the co-ops throughout the state was almost more than they could bear. And I think you've really got to give homage to John Rankin, who really, Commissioner, I was reading, it kind of reminded me of you. He never took no for an answer. He worked like a bulldog. There was one 4-county electric power association. For the 15 years I've been here, I've asked, where do you think 4 county come from? Y'all serve parts of 8 or 9 or 10 counties. And in my research, what I found was, in the early days, TVA and REA, they just didn't give you the money. They had certain standards you had to get to. You had density standards. TVA even required you to use, guarantee so much electricity to make this work. They had to build a business model to make it work. And so you had, I hope I get this right, Clay, Lowndes, Noxubee, and Tibby Hall? Yep. Okay. Those 4 counties, separate, put the big map back up, the color map. Those 4 counties did not meet the requirements of TVA and REA for density purposes. No, the color map. You got the color one? No, not the green one, the multicolored one. Okay. You see Alcorn, Tippah, Tishomingo, Prentice. Those are all 1 county systems. They have the density, they form 1 county. Tom Digby kind of grew in 1956 when he got the territories, but 4 counties, those counties right there, did not have the density to do a 1 county system. And so Congressman Rankin, not deterred, he wanted to make sure everybody in the 1st Congressional District had power. In fact, that was his mantra, all of my counties will have power. And so he got REA, along with, at that time, there was a New Deal plan, the WPA, the work program. And he got those 4 counties combined together to get their density. He then got the WPA to give them a $60,000 grant, saying that the workers they would do would help with the electricians and all that kind of stuff, and then got REA to put up $325,000 loan to build the lines. And so what happened was that model became a model throughout all of the nation. The WPA and REA working together, because we bought so much skilled labor when we took on this venture, it was amazing what all that would happen. And that, they actually met at the Mississippi State College football stadium. And that's where Congressman Rankin was there to kick off. They thought they had 700 customers to get it started, 700 members. They ended up with over 1,200 by the time the day was over. But the congressman worked diligently hard, and his speech is reported to say that now with this, I have now got power to all my congressional district, the 1st district in the South to have all electricity, and he was very pleased with that. He was a very driving force behind the revolution that took place up there in North Mississippi.
It's amazing. Mr. Commissioner, we're getting to about 10 minutes left of the program tonight. Would you care to take a moment and kind of explain how the cooperative is involved in just more than just providing electricity, how we're headed to a threshold into the future where we're now looking at broadband internet, and of course we're all familiar with the work and your endeavors to get this passed to the state legislature signing the law. So can you kind of take us where we're headed from here on out?
Yeah, and let me say, it wasn't just me. I think we've got some members in the House and Senate here. Michael and electric cooperatives in Mississippi, our 26 electric cooperatives helped to pass earlier this year the Mississippi Broadband Enabling Act, which removed the 1942 prohibition that electric cooperatives could do anything but sell electricity. And so, you know, in 2019, high-speed internet service is the electricity of the 21st century. My understanding from Dr. Allen here at ICC is that there is not one course at this community college that doesn't have some component of online connectivity needs. Some of y'all in this audience have probably had to go to McDonald's, Subway, cousin's house to do homework or to get connected. Anybody ever had to do that before? Yeah. Man,
Just
everywhere.
all over the house.
And we know that that's an issue in rural Mississippi. In my opinion, this is the issue of our day. I mean, we're right back to where, in principle, some things are different. You've got a competitive market, they're different. But the idea of the technology of the day being needed is the same place we were in the 1930s. With the change of this law, what we're seeing now, and I'll brag on our area, we're seeing the growth of rural electric cooperatives announcing broadband projects, looking into broadband projects, is more concentrated. It is the most concentrated area in the state of Mississippi, but is also, I would argue, probably the most concentrated area in groups of numbers of cooperatives in the South, maybe in the nation right now, you know, without it. And our state is going to once again lead with the technology of the future. Some of y'all live in places where you simply cannot get any quality internet service. You forget Netflix. You can forget downloading homework or uploading work. It's over with. Not to mention all of the great things that come with economic development, telehealth, telemedicine, the things that will change our life. Broadband, high-speed internet service is the electricity of the 21st century. It's just as necessary today as being able to cut the lights on was in 1934. And so in this region, you already have announced and publicly talked about 4 projects that are in the announcement stage, are already taken off. The first in our state, as far as the date they voted, we're back to these two people competing on being the first. Tallahatchie Valley Electric Power Association, which serves on the west side of North Mississippi, announced theirs on August the 10th. Tom Bigby Electric Power Board voted the same day and announced theirs on August the 11th. Since then, Northeast Electric Power Association, Oxford, Keith Hayward is their CEO, is here. Today, Ronnie Rowland from Prentiss County Electric has announced Prentiss Connect, which is their broadband subsidiary, and I think there are other ones that may be making announcements soon. This is going, because of the way the law is written, these projects require the cooperatives to offer services to every one of their members. They're the only entity in the law today that must serve people, Some of the bigger companies will tell you or tell your families, we have no plans to serve your area. You can hang up, get internet service. That's different with your electric cooperatives who are owned by the members. And so, Chris, I think that you're seeing a revolution, you know, in 2019. I think Michael agreed with this. I would have never dreamed when the governor signed that bill that before the end of the year, this would have taken hold this fast.
No, it's amazing how quick, and let me say something. The competition, the agency the commissioner and I worked through didn't come into being in 1956. When we started this, everything was wide open. And I really didn't understand until doing some research this weekend on the old stuff, but when you became a co-op, especially the non-TVA ones, the REAs that started from scratch, they built the entire system at one time. In fact, the general manager, CEO, they're actually called superintendents. And from what I can gather from reading on the celebrations of the energizing, they must have built the system and then they didn't turn anybody on, but they had the original plans built, which could take 3 to 5 years, depending on the war and what was going on. But all those customers who had signed up by REA rules had to sign up and pay a $5 membership fee, and then wait for 3 to 4 years before they finally got the electricity. But there were big parties when they did. In fact, one co-op down south, they were going to energize in December, but they actually had the party in August because it would be too cold to have a party in December. They didn't want to miss a good party. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But what we found out back in the early 30s is that when we laid out our plans for REA, the investor owners would do what they call ghosting. They would come down where our lines had been staked and put up poles and lines to nowhere serving nothing. So when the REA inspectors came back, it looked as if the area was being served. And that was a lot of that went on. In fact, in the early 1940s, the legislature passed a law forbidding investor-owned utilities from doing that, and ghosting, that was a big rumor oil. I say that to say the broadband world is very competitive. So if your co-op hasn't announced they're getting in the broadband business, don't let that scare you. Right now, there's probably 8 co-ops that have plans to get in the broadband business. Not all of them are talking. They are steadily building fiber for their own electrical needs. They're connecting their substations, they're connecting their offices, and when they're ready, they'll start telling you to come sign up. But the same thing that happened in the 30s with the ghosting and the talking, same thing happens now. When we go and we hear other co-ops, they say, listen, you know, the co-op mantra is openness and tell your membership, but this is a ultra-competitive business involved. And if you tell your competitors where you're going, they'll start building on top of it and they'll pick the whole low-hanging fruit before you get there. So just because your co-op had announced, don't mean there's not plans for them to be built. And I agree with Commissioner Presley. The response that we've seen, really 25 distribution co-ops, 1 generation transmission. So there's 25 eligible to do broadband. All of them did a study. All of them have looked. It is really amazing the due diligence these boards are doing and trying to figure out if they can do this. And I'm just pleased. I think, you know, like Commissioner said, from a regional perspective and the numbers, we're far exceeding the other states right now.
Well, one thing I would say, and Michael's exactly right on that, it's a different market. The issue we know is there's a hunger and there's a need. And that is where co-ops and the projects that you're being talked about in Mississippi are not old dial-up internet services. Maybe you could get an email on, maybe you couldn't. Projects that you're seeing just kicked off in Mississippi at the goal is fiber to the home. It is the Cadillac gold-plated service for rural Mississippi that will be there forever. You're talking, some of y'all are familiar with internet speeds, and what you see throughout the country, I won't talk specifically Mississippi, but what you see as a general principle is around 100 megabits per second upload and download as just the basic package. Some of y'all would kill to have that at home, right? And the speeds are much better, and it is doing in 2019 what really was done in 1934. As Commissioner, Michael probably experienced this when he was on the commission. You know, we have people call our office and say, we need to get internet service, so we'll try to call them providers and try to help them out. And what do we hear from the big companies? What do we hear from them? We have no plans to serve that area. Essentially, those people are left out. The same spirit that brought that about is bringing about this revolution in Mississippi that you're going to be a part of. I said this at Tom Bigby's kickoff, and I spoke at it, and when I spoke at the kickoff at Tallahatchie Valley. You're standing at a point in history that today we may not grasp, we may not get it all because it's a lot of jargon, it's a lot of business models and stuff. We just want the service. We're going to look back at this to the time in which we turned the corner in the state of Mississippi. Walt Willis and I were talking just a minute ago, as I said, Walt's a board member at Monroe County Electric Power Association, to demonstrate the hunger out there. I think the survey process in Monroe County has been going on 2 weeks. They have 10,000 members. 4,108 members have returned their survey. 41%. That's astronomical figures of people that take time to participate in. So the work that's being done by our co-ops is diligent. It is due diligence that they have to do and should do to make sure that they're measuring twice and cutting once if they in fact decide to do this. But we're going to witness, and you're going to witness, a revolution in rural Mississippi. And it is going to be thanks to the very entities that Michael represents and that these members and gentlemen and ladies are here tonight to represent. And we may not grasp it all this time. But I promise you, somebody will be sitting here 85 years from now and say, this is the point at which rural Mississippi turned the corner. Guess what? We rank 49th in the United States today in lack of high-speed internet service or internet speeds to our people. Watch that change over the next 7 years.
And boy, that sure is encouraging because you keep hearing stories about the terminology of brain drain leaving our state and the brightest, such as yourselves, not seeing the opportunities that you wish they had in rural Mississippi. Well, as this thing expands, that's obviously going to change that paradigm. You're going to be able to stay here, conduct business here. You don't have to leave. And that's the inspiring thing about the work that you two gentlemen and the entities you represent. We as citizens of the state are grateful. I know as a parent of 2 children, I'm thankful to have the idea that when these individuals, these young men are looking for careers someday, they don't have to go abroad. They can stay here and not only earn a good living, but they can be productive citizens in their own backyard. So that's an encouraging aspect of that whole endeavor. Once again, I want to thank you, John, for coming. Now I'm going to bring our master of ceremony, Miss Ike, back up here for the closing remarks, and then we will dismiss
Any
this.
questions? We got any questions?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes, before we close, anybody have any questions for this gentleman here? We have microphones for this endeavor.
Let me ask y'all a question. How many people out there, students, believe access to internet service is critical to what you're doing in school? Anybody? Yeah, everybody? Does anybody here want to stay in a community that's disconnected from the outside world from internet service? Nobody. All right. All right, I see one hand. There's always one in this crowd.
There are times when it's good to understand.
Any other questions? Okay.
Just one thing. I just, time and time again, we hear, especially the Commissioner and I, we heard it in January, December and January. In 1935, co-ops took off across this nation. 20 years later, 95% of the farms throughout America were electrified. And in that time, the federal government did not lose one dime of money. All those were loans that were paid back, including Alcorn County was the first co-op to pay back their REA loan, almost 9 years after they got one in 1948. Or so that's what I read. Is that true? You were first to pay it back. So this is one of the few times that, a lot of times government programs that don't follow up its promise, there's always problems. This is one program that did exactly what it was supposed to do. And not only did it not cost the federal government any money, it made the government money and still does to this day. Because those are loans that we borrowed and paid back with interest.
With the interest
To the
rates.
federal government.
Yes,
That's correct.
Any other questions?
Somebody got a question?
Oh, that's just, he's the one that had his hand up, said he didn't want to be connected. If this man was my daddy, I wouldn't want to be connected either. So I don't know.
Okay, all right. I think we have a question in the back, right?
Somebody got a question? Thank you.
but it was also inspirational. And when I say that, I'm not saying that lightly. I say inspirational because as a history instructor, it is so easy for us to forget from where we have come. For us to forget all of the hard work and the innovation that was done by others so that we can reap the benefits of it today. And we often just take advantage, we fail to take advantage of some of the opportunities here, and we take for granted so many things that we have and the dedication of others that their names are too often forgotten from our lips. So it's nice to have these reminders of how we have become, taken ownership of a standard of living that is such a change in the last 100 years, in the last 50 years, you know, even from when my parents were young. So I do think that this was an inspirational and informative presentation, and thank you so much. This kind of shows us the past, present, and hopefully the future of Mississippi. Now, Commissioner Presley, thank you so much for not only spearheading this event, we greatly appreciate it, but also for your service for the state of Mississippi and especially Northeast Mississippi. So you have done so much. Mr. Callahan, we appreciate your attendance and driving up here from Madison and your participation tonight. And we also thank you for your service to the state. So much to do with organizing this event tonight as well. So we'd like to thank you for that. I can see students out there. Okay, I'm going before y'all leave. We're going to thank a few people that were very integral in pulling this off tonight. So if you'll just bear with me very quickly. on behalf of the Social Science Division and the Political Science Club, we're going to thank specifically these people. Dr. Allen, our very esteemed and well-respected president of Itawamba Community College. The Board of Trustees for Itawamba Community College. Dr. Michelle Summerall, Vice President of Instruction for Itawamba Community College. Community Relations for their assistance in the stage setup and the promotion of tonight's event so that you knew to come. Seth Shelna, the man behind the scenes that makes all of this wonderful events possible in this building. Yes, please, yes. At ICC, that's also working behind the scenes to make these events possible. Room-to-room furniture loaned us these wonderful chairs. I hope they were comfortable. Okay, great. Wonderful. Yes, and I'm sure they're for sale at Room-to-Room. You can get with me for prices later. Last but not least, the faculty and staff of Itawamba Community College that encourage attendance from their students tonight. Without you, this would not have been possible, and as Mr. Stevenson likes to say, teamwork makes dreams work, and we have an incredible teamwork system here among faculty and staff, and such wonderful student participation in the classroom and for events like this. So thank you all very much, and have a wonderful night.